Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of November, and what a reading month it was. I read a lot of books. I read a lot of really good books. If you're new to my wrap-ups, the way that these work is I'm going to start with some reading stats. As a stats nerd, I think this is fun. If you are not interested in the reading stats, you're more than welcome to skip forward to where I start actually reviewing books. And then I'm going to be talking about books in three categories. This is going to be my hits, my surprises, and my faves. So let's go ahead and dive into some stats of what all I read this month. In November, I read 27 books for a total of 9,138 pages, or an average page count of 304 pages per day. I was reading a lot this month. I think a lot of this is because I haven't started my new job yet. My freelance work has really been winding down, so I've had a lot of free time to read, and I've used that to prioritize getting books off my TBR that I have for review. As you will see, the vast majority of the books that I read this month were books that I had for review, so that was really what I was trying to do. This month, 24 of the books that I read were advanced reader copies or books I had for review, so nearly all of them, all but 3. This month I didn't have any rereads. I did read 5 graphic novels, so that is probably part of why that number is a little elevated, as some of it was the graphic novels, which was fun. I read 2 indie or self-published titles, and I did not read any translated fiction this month. In terms of format, it was a pretty heavy audiobook listening month. This month, 18 of the books that I read were audio. I also read 4 physical books and 5 ebooks, so a little bit of a mix there. Taking a closer look at those audiobooks, 9 of them are what I call shelf, which means I had a physical copy on my TBR and I got it off via audio, or primarily via audio. And in terms of where those audiobooks are coming from, this month 2 of them were from Audible, 9 of them were audio review copies from NetGalley, 2 of them were downloaded from BookFunnel, which is kind of other, it's not on the chart that I have here. And then the other 5 of them were from Libro.fm, including some audio influencer copies. I do subscribe with my own money to Libro.fm, but also every month they give me the opportunity to download a few audiobooks of a list if I'm interested in them in exchange for talking about them. So as always, there is a link down below if you want to go and check out Libro.fm. They do some really great sales around this time of year. They're giftable, and I love them as an alternative to Audible because proceeds go to support local indie bookstores, and they're fantastic. And they are now international. They didn't used to be, so that's exciting. Next, let's take a look at age demographics. This month, 21 of the books that I read were targeted at an adult audience. 6 of them were YA, and I did not finish any middle grade books this month. I'm in progress with a few with my kids, but I haven't actually finished any. In terms of publication date, it should be no big surprise that I was reading mostly front list because I was really prioritizing books for review. The earliest published book that I read this month was from 2023, so not very old, and I only read 1 book published prior to 2025. I did read 21 books published in 2025, and I got started on my 2026 releases. I read 5 2026 releases this month. Next up is author demographics. If you've been around for a while, you know that I really value reading diversely. That's something I prioritize. And so I have benchmarks that I try to hit every month. My goal is to read around 50% Black, Indigenous, and person of color authors, and at least 25% from openly queer authors. And we definitely hit that this month. 48% of the books that I read were by authors who are openly members of the LGBTQ+ community. And 51.9% of the books that I read were by Black, Indigenous, and person of color authors, which is great. Taking a look at genre, November was definitely a romance and fantasy month, which kind of makes sense. It's getting cold. We're past October. This is kind of the vibe. This month I read 10 fantasy books, 9 romance books, which includes 8 speculative romances and 1 historical romance. Your speculative is going to be your sci-fi, fantasy, or paranormal romance. I also read 1 contemporary fiction, 1 general fiction, 1 general nonfiction, 1 historical fiction, 1 horror, 1 literary fiction, 1 mystery, and 1 sci-fi. So mostly romance, and honestly mostly speculative romance. So we're doing a lot of fantasy, romantasy. Was very much where we were at for a lot of the reading this month, which I'm not mad about. Lastly, I'll tell you where I'm at with the Read What You Own challenge. You may remember last month it was out of control, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I have so many books on my TBR, it's stressing me out. So while I didn't do this as a video, I decided to go back through some of the books that have been on my TBR for several years that I haven't read yet and read the first few chapters of them and sort of cull books that way, because at that point I had over 500 physical books on my TBR, which was just too much. And I have books on my TBR that have been sitting there since like 2018 that I haven't read yet. So I went through, and on the one hand, it got me excited again about books that have been sitting on my TBR that I forgot why I was interested in, but it also gave me the opportunity to unhaul a pretty large number of books, which is why the numbers I'm about to tell you are going to be what they are and why it's so significantly better. I ended up unhauling around 50 books in total, but I feel pretty good about the fact that I gave them a really solid chance. Some of them were things I bought, some of them were things that were given to me, some of them were things I got in the mail, you know, and also tastes sort of change over years. There's stuff that's been on my TBR for a long time that I'm just not that interested in anymore, or I don't really see myself wanting to prioritize. And so I'm like, you know what, this could be passed on to somebody else. I did tell my patrons and channel members that I was doing this, and they were like, ooh, can we know what the books are? And so I am planning on doing like a patron channel member unhaul video. It won't be on here, but if you want to see that, you can check it out there. I will tell you that that is the sort of thing that is gonna be more patron channel member exclusive going forward. Like, that's where all my Goodreads Choice Awards content is happening, is for patrons and channel members, partly because I'm now working adjacent to the publishing industry. So I'm just a little more careful about what I'm putting out here. So heads up, if those are things you're interested in, it will be available in paid subscriptions if you're interested. If not, no worries. Okay, so all of that said, as of the end of November, I had 269 books on my audio TBR, which is up 38 from the beginning of the year. Again, I'm not too concerned about the digital stuff. It is really more the physical. My Kindle TBR is 67, which is up 3 from the beginning of the year. And my physical TBR got down to 449 books, which is down 5 from the beginning of the year. I mean, I think it helps a lot that I unhauled like 50 books and then I read quite a lot of books. So between those things, we're doing a lot better. I'm feeling a lot less stressed about how many books are on my TBR heading into the new year. So really happy about that. All right. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and talk about the books that I read in the month of November, beginning with my hits. I will tell you that some of these books I have talked about in greater depth in different reading vlog challenge videos that I've done this month. So for those books, I'm not going to get into too much detail. I'll tell you a little bit about it, but then I will link the video or tell you where to go if you want to hear more about them. Partly just because of time, because I read a lot of books this month and I'm not doing mid-month wrap-ups anymore. So, you know, trying to balance that, and I have another video to film today, so this is what we're doing. Speaking of which, the first book on my list of hits for the month is something that I read for a challenge video that was really fun, where I read books that I predicted I would give 5 stars to. I picked 5 books that I thought would be 5-star reads and read them all, and it was really fun. I had a great time, so I will link that video up above. But my first hit is The Women of Wild Hill by Kirsten Miller. This is like witchy, contemporary fantasy, magical realism vibes with something to say about patriarchy and wealth inequality and the treatment of the environment. I really liked it a lot. It is set in the same universe as The Change by Kirsten Miller, which I also really loved. Also, I don't know if you can hear it. I'm hoping that I can like pull it out, but this car outside my window has been going off over and over and over again for like the last hour. I don't know what the hell is going on with this car, but it keeps going off. It's really annoying. Anyway, I really liked it. It is a multi-generational story about a family of women witches over the years. And yeah, it definitely had me thinking a lot. I talk about this quite a bit in that reading vlog, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go check that out. My next hit was also a book that I read for that 5-star prediction vlog, and it is Conform by Ariel Sullivan. This was so much fun to read. This is another book that I would say is sort of giving Divergent but grown-up vibes. It's sort of like Divergent meets Handmaid's Tale, dystopian romance with lots of drama and reveals and political conspiracies. One thing that I will say about this book that I said in that video as a heads up is the main character is very naive. She does read as quite young, and while this is an adult book and I wouldn't call it YA, I think that people who get annoyed at YA because of the heroines who are very driven by their emotions rather than logic and make kind of dumb decisions might not get on great with this. I didn't mind it. It's used a lot to drive the plot and the action, and I definitely will be picking up book 2. Again, if you want to hear more, go check out that reading vlog. My next hit for the month was Voidwalker by S.A. McLean. I finally got to this. I had an arc. It came out in August, but I'm trying to get to the things on my list before the end of the year. I really enjoyed this. It's like a monster romantasy, I would say. We're following a bisexual woman who is a smuggler, and she lives in a world that is run by these humanoid monsters that eat humans. Humans are their preferred source of food, and they've worked out sort of a peace deal where these monsters rule and let the humans mostly live in peace in exchange for periodic sacrifices, willing human sacrifices. And so she ends up taking a too good to be true smuggling deal that gets her into hot water and involved in a bunch of political conspiracies and forced to work together with one of these monsters who's also kind of hot. So it's like a steamy monster romantasy. It's a pretty good time. I enjoyed it. I found it entertaining. It's a nice mix of good world building and fantasy elements and kind of like a action-packed plot with also like the steamy monster romance elements to it. So I would recommend this one. I enjoyed it. I don't know if this is supposed to be the start of the series. It could be, but it does read as a standalone where it has a satisfying conclusion, but it was good. It was fun. My next hit is a kind of a graphic novel. It's actually a manhwa, which is sort of like manga, but from Korea. And I have this for review. It comes out in February. This is called The Knight and Her Emperor. It's on sale February 3rd, and I really enjoyed it. It is the first volume in a new series being put out by Penguin Random House that's been translated from Korean into English. It follows a lady knight who is underestimated by most people until an enemy king sees her for who she is and for her potential, and she decides to defect to his side. And it's got kind of a very slow burn romance between the two of them. Not much happens by the end of this volume, but you can see what is to come. I really liked volume 1. I thought it was great. Would recommend if that sounds up your alley. My next hit is another graphic novel, This Place Kills Me by Mariko Tamaki and Nicole Gu. This was great. I really like Mariko Tamaki's work. It's like a queer YA murder mystery meets Romeo and Juliet. It's set in an all-girls boarding school where they're putting on a production of Romeo and Juliet, and then their Juliet turns up dead and people assume it's a suicide, but maybe it's not. And we've got this queer outcast girl who starts investigating what happened. I will say this does get into some rather intense topics, so a little bit of a spoiler, but it does include grooming and sexual abuse in it, so content warnings for that. But I thought this was really good, really well done. I liked it. I read a lot of really good graphic novels this month because my next 2 hits are also graphic novels that I had for review from NetGalley. First is Steam by Shannon K. Garrity. This was really cute. It's a YA graphic novel that's coming out next year. It has a sapphic romance element to it, but follows this girl who was designed in a lab and has escaped that lab. So she's super, super brilliant, like this genius lab created young woman who's escaped and is working in a coffee shop, maybe has feelings for one of her coworkers, and her goal is to hook everybody up. So she's using her genius to try and matchmake people. It's delightful. I really liked it. Definitely would recommend. And then the other hit graphic novel is another one coming out next year. This is Forgive Me Not by Mari Costa. And this was also just really fun, cute, funny. It's a sapphic fantasy romance about a princess who finds out on her 18th birthday that she is actually a changeling, and she is kidnapped and brought to the world of the Fae by her human counterpart, who's kind of this like butch lesbian, and they fall in love. So it's definitely got like Grumpy Sunshine vibes and fae magic, and it's really cute. Really liked it a lot. My next hit is a nonfiction book. This is called Weightless by Rocio Salas Whalen, MD. I was interested in this because I went to an event a few months ago with a publisher where she spoke on the panel, and I thought it sounded interesting. So when I saw it available on NetGalley, I requested it. It's basically a guide to GLP-1 medications, but from a very medically grounded and empathetic perspective. It's written by a doctor who specializes in their use. It gets into the history and development of these medications, the way they've been used over the last many years, the changes that have made them more popular, and then sort of a guidebook for people who are on them. So if you've been considering going on one for medical reasons, or you know somebody who's on one, I think it has a lot of useful information. And then one thing that I appreciate it talks about, which doesn't always get talked about, is some of the negative mental and emotional things that can come with a dramatic change in one's body, such as like being treated differently and then seeing firsthand just how fatphobic society tends to be. So I really appreciate the perspective that this takes. I think it's pretty balanced. It's interesting. It's got good information. So if that is something you're looking for, maybe check it out. And then my final hit of November was Tender Cruelty by Katie Robert. This is the second to last book in this series. I have been reading them for years. There's one book left to come, and wow, this was a long-awaited one. And it's the Zeus and Hera romance where they sort of hate each other but also sleep together. And I will say at this point in the series, there's so much external political stuff going on that is more the focus, and it can detract from the romance. I still really love it, and I'm so invested in what exactly is happening in the series, and I cannot wait for the final book to see what's going to happen, because wow, there was some wild stuff that happened in this book. I felt like I wanted a little bit more time with the couple that the romance is actually focused on than what we got, but it was still really good. Definitely a hit. Next, let's talk about my surprises. The first book I'm putting in the surprises category is The Bookshop Below by Georgia Summers. I had read Georgia Summers' first book and really loved it, and I was interested in picking this up. I like the idea of like magical bookstores in London. It wasn't quite what I expected. I think some people are gonna like it. It is rather slow-paced, I would say, and it took me a while to figure out what exactly was going on in the book. The magical bookshops are disappearing, and we have a young woman who is taking over a bookshop, but other people don't want her to. It does have a little bit of a romantic subplot. I don't think that's necessarily the strongest part of the book, and the ending is interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about the way it chose to resolve everything. It does a thing that I won't spoil, but I don't necessarily love that. It wasn't how I expected the ending to go, but it's got a little bit of a mystery element to it. And I do think if readers are looking for kind of a slow-paced, cozy, magical bookshop type story that also has a murder mystery element to it, you may like it. So the next one is the 11th installment in an ongoing series that I read and love. This is Through Gates of Garnet and Gold by Shauna Maguire, the 11th installment in the Wayward Children series. I've read all of them. This one's a little bit different. I feel like most of the time there'll be some kind of an emotional impact that the novellas in these series have on me, where they really hit hard emotionally. I didn't feel that way about this one, but it was still really fun because it was sort of like the gangs all together again type of novella, which I enjoyed. I thought it was a pretty good time. So Nancy, for those who've been reading, who had been happy in the halls of the dead, being a living statue, has come back to look for help because the ghosts that haunt those halls have started attacking and killing the living statues. And so she needs her group of friends from School for Wayward Children to help her go on a quest, stop it, figure out what's going on. So it is that sort of a vibe. It's fun. The gang's back together, we're solving some kind of a little mystery situation, and we're getting to see characters we haven't seen in a while. We're introducing a couple of new characters. I enjoyed it. It wasn't one that was like, oh my god, I feel something so deeply from it, but it was a good time. Next up is another book that I read for my 5-star prediction video. This is The Isle in the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri. I did like a lot of things about this, especially the way it's talking about storytelling. I could say a lot of things about this book, but I'm going to keep it short, and I'm going to say go check out that video if you want to hear my full thoughts, because I get into it quite a bit there. But this is a sapphic fantasy novel that is very loosely drawing on Arthurian legends, but in a way that you maybe haven't seen before. In this world, some people are born as the sort of reincarnation of characters from stories, and they are fated to live out the fates of the characters from the stories, and that's part of how the stories are kept alive. And the main people that we're focusing on in this story are two women who were born in the story of the knight and the witch, where the knight and witch are fated to fall in love, and then the knight kills the witch. So it's kind of a tragedy, but it's doing some really interesting things thematically with pulling apart storytelling and who gets to tell stories and who gets to be at the center of stories and how does mythology change over time. So surprising because it wasn't quite what I was expecting, but it's definitely worth reading. My next surprise is another one that was not what I thought it was going to be. A good book, but like not what I had expected. This is Beings by Ilana Masad. So this was pitched to me as sapphic sci-fi, which it is, but it's like literary sci-fi, which is not a bad thing. It's well done, but it just wasn't what I was expecting going in. It's much more lit fic than I think what I had expected. So this follows three main different timelines and characters that don't seem to have anything to do with each other until eventually, of course, they do have something to do with each other. And it has to do with stories of alien abduction. So there is an interracial couple in the 1960s who experiences alien abduction, and that sort of impacts their future. And then we have a lesbian around the same time who is an aspiring science fiction writer. And then we have somebody in a more modern time who is reading up on files about these different cases. So I won't get too deep into what exactly this book ends up being, but it's really well done. It's beautiful. I think it's a debut novel, and it does have sci-fi elements to it, but I would call this much more literary fiction, literary sci-fi with a lot of queer characters. So it was good. Not what I expected, but good. I guess I can just say that almost all of the books that I've talked about so far are books I've had for review, with the exception of This Place Kills Me. It's like a graphic novel I actually bought for myself, but like pretty much everything else I've had for review. My next surprise was Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldree. This is the third book set in the Legends and Lattes universe, and this also was not what I expected. A good book, but like quite different from the other two books. Far less cozy, I would say. This has, it's still got some cozy elements to it, but it's a lot more heavy on action. This follows fan favorite character Fern, who is having sort of a midlife crisis and gets drunk and runs away and ends up with this caravan of people. And it's sort of her discovering who she wants to be in this next stage of her life. There are battles, there's found family elements to it, there are cozy elements to it, but it is much more plot and action heavy, I would say, than other books in the series. So don't go in expecting anything too cozy. I think it's still good. I like the messaging too about like rediscovering who you are, and that it's okay if something that used to be your dream isn't your dream anymore, and it doesn't make it a bad dream. It just means that sometimes we change. So I liked it. I thought it was good, but not what I was anticipating. My next surprise is A Waltz on the Wild Side by Erica Ridley. This is, I believe, the final installment in the Wild Winchester series, which is a kind of rollicking historical romance series about a found/adopted family of siblings, each finding love. And so there are Black characters, disabled characters, queer characters, and this final book follows Jacob, who is really great with animals and is also secretly a poet, finding love. He's a Black man living in Victorian England, but is relatively protected by his wealth. And the heroine in the story, Vivian, is a formerly enslaved Black woman who is an aspiring playwright and a newspaper advice columnist who hates the Winchesters. Her cousin is obsessed with them and wants to be just like them, and she hates it because she thinks that they have so much privilege because their wealth and their status protect them when they're doing these dangerous things in ways that wouldn't be afforded to people like her cousin, for example, who have less money, privilege, status, etc. So then her cousin goes missing, and she's forced to turn to the Winchesters for help, in finding him, and, you know, maybe realizes that she was a little too hard on them, but also they realize she may be kind of right, and she ends up falling for Jacob. I will say she is extremely prickly, extremely opinionated, sometimes kind of insufferable. And she does change, she does moderate over time, but I think this was, of the books in the series, the one that felt the most heavy in the social commentary, I guess. I did really like the way that they came together by the end, but yeah, it definitely took a while to warm up to Vivian, because she is like very difficult, and in a way where I'm like, you're not seeing the hypocrisy of some of the things you're saying. It was interesting, and she does realize those things by the end, but it is frustrating through part of the process. Editing Bethany here. I'm watching this back, and I feel like I need to say, I like books with social commentary. I like romances with social commentary. I'm not opposed to that, and I also like prickly characters and you know, books that are exploring the same sorts of themes that this does. So it's not that I don't like that it has those things. It's more just that it was kind of heavy-handed. Like, there was a lot of it, and I feel like I wanted more time spent on the romance and like a little bit less of the social commentary messages, if that makes sense. My next surprise was Mrs. Orwell by Andrea Chalupa. This was cool because I did not know anything about George Orwell's wife, and this is a graphic novel that is about the life of Mrs. Orwell. It is, I'm calling it historical fiction because I think it's like lightly fictionalized, but she was kind of a badass. They lived during World War II, and she was an activist. She was the main breadwinner for the family. She did editing on all of George's books and was the inspiration behind some of his ideas. And, you know, I think that this is great that she's sort of getting her flowers, especially because it sounds like George Orwell was not the best husband. He was definitely unfaithful and sometimes quite difficult, but yeah, this was fascinating. I really enjoyed it. Coming out early next year, so keep an eye out for that if that sounds of interest. And then the final book in my surprises category is The Library of Fates by Margot Harrison. This was really interesting. It's sort of a blend of like mystery, dark academia, and contemporary fantasy. It follows characters in two different timelines, and they sort of eventually come together to solve the mystery of like what exactly happened. So in the past, these characters had met in college, where they were involved with the Library of Fates, this magical library powered by a certain book that can be dangerous at times, and there were secrets, there were deaths, there were like different things that happened surrounding that. And then in the future, one of the main characters, who was also the son of the librarian, returns home because his mother has died. So he returns home for her funeral. They find that the magic book powering the Library of Fates has disappeared, and he has to work together with the current librarian to find it. And he has no memory of her, but they knew each other in college. And so it's like, what happened and why? And like, what is the Library of Fates? And all of these questions. It's kind of a blend of like mystery, dark academia, fantasy. Yeah, I liked it. It was a very quick read and had an interesting conclusion. Lastly, let's talk about my favorites for November. There are 6 books that I put in this category. One of them is a 6-star read, favorite of the year, and the others are favorites of the month. So I will let you know when I get to my 6-star favorite of the year, but all of these were really good, among the best books that I read this month. First up is a book that I did read in my 5-star prediction video, so I was definitely right about it, and that is Our Vicious Oaths by N.E. Davenport. I couldn't resist getting this like gorgeous Illyrial special edition. It's so pretty. If you were looking for super steamy political romantasy with black fae and interesting world building and politics, this is the book for you. I definitely would recommend it. It was much steamier than I was expecting, to be honest, because I had read the previous series from this author, which I loved. It was like a sci fantasy duology. It had a little bit of steaminess in the second book, but it was definitely not like heavy on it, whereas this jumps in right away. So we have a fae princess who owns and runs a sex club and enjoys it herself, who is betrothed to marry a very powerful overlord, high king who has killed 4 previous wives. So does she want to marry him? No, but it is her duty. And then her wedding day is interrupted by a rival king who, it turns out, while he was in disguise, she had hooked up with at her sex club the night before. This is all like in the first couple chapters of the book. And so the two of them, even though they're supposed to be enemies, end up teaming up to try to fight this super powerful overlord, but also fall for each other. So really, really good. Definitely enjoyed it. Definitely would recommend it. For sure, one of the best books I read this month. Next is a book that I read for my cozy reading day vlog, which was really fun, where I like did cozy things, read books, put together some Legos. I will link that video up above if you want to go check it out. But this is Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews. I really love C.G. Drews. It is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is like all the angst and the longing, but make it queer YA horror. It's like very, very emo, angsty YA horror. And so this one follows a strange teen boy who's kept locked up in the room of this estate, and then his guardian dies, and he is interacting with another teen boy who something bad happened with when they were kids. And then there's this strange garden out back. And I don't want to tell you anything really more than that, but it was super creepy, gorgeously written, really loved it. It is definitely horror. It's got body horror elements to it, but a lot of the story is about trauma and abuse and the way that sometimes wealthy families are able to hide things and get away with things. And it was great. Really beautiful and tragic, and like it was really good. Loved it. My next favorite is Eternal Ruin by Tegest Girma. This is the sequel to Immortal Dark, which was one of my favorite books of the year last year. Absolutely love. It's like dark academia, dark romance with black vampires. And sometimes when you have a debut novel, the sequel doesn't quite live up to your expectations. That was not the case here. This was really good. It was really good. It was very twisty, very dark, relatively sexy. And I like, does this read like YA? No, not really. It does read more like new adults, right? Like this is, you know, I wouldn't call it like full on steamy adult style, but it is for sure older characters. They're over 18, and it is sexier than what you would expect out of a book that is actually about teenagers. So heads up about that, but it's really, really good. And there are twists and reveals, and I can't wait for book 3. This was for sure a hit. My next favorite was so good. Oh my gosh, I had this for review. It is The Keeper of Magical Things by Julie Leong. I loved this. It is a cozy sapphic fantasy romance. Super slow burn, really wonderfully cozy. It is set in the same world as The Teller of Small Fortunes, which I also really loved, but I like this one even better. This follows an aspiring mage who isn't super powerful and has been struggling to have her magic grow enough to actually be a full mage, who gets the opportunity to prove herself by traveling to a small town with a bunch of magical objects and secure them in that small town. But she has to partner with a mage who is known as the Ice Queen, because she's so like beautiful but also distant emotionally from everybody else. And of course, it's a romance. It's a super slow burn, super cute romance, and I loved it so, so much. And they end up using some of the magical artifacts to help the townspeople in this magicless town that they've gone to. It was great. It was delightful. Absolutely loved it. Also, there's a cat dragon. How did I forget to say? There's a cat dragon that is super mischievous. It's so good. My next favorite for the month is one that I was finishing at the end of that cozy reading vlog I mentioned earlier, and that is Why I Love Horror, Essays on Horror Literature, edited by Becky Siegel Spratford. This is so good. I absolutely love this. So the editor is a librarian who has put together and introduced essays from all of these incredible horror authors, many of whom I know and love, some of whom I have never read from, but I kind of want to now. And she gives you an introduction to not only their essay, but also good places to start with their work, or if you already like their work, another author to try, which I think is really cool. She's a librarian who specializes in horror. And I think that this is the perfect book to pick up if you are a lover of horror, if you're interested in horror, or if you don't really get it. If you're like, why though? Why horror? I think that these authors do a fantastic job of getting into why exactly, and they're really good and really interesting and varied. So some of the people that are in here, we've got Alma Katsu, Tanana Reeve-Dew, Jennifer McMahon, Josh Mallerman, Paul Tremblay, Grady Hendrix, Cynthia Pelayo, Clay McLeod Chapman, Rachel Harrison, Victor Lavelle, Stephen Graham Jones, like, and more. Really great. Highly recommend. Cannot recommend this enough. I did have this for review, but like I might need to get myself a finished copy at some point. It's so good. Lastly, this favorite is a favorite of the year. This is the one book that got 6 stars from me. And it was also one that I read for that 5-star prediction video. So I'm really happy I got to it. I loved this so much. I knew I was going to like it, but this was like one of the best reading experiences that I think I've had this year. These Summer Storms by Sarah MacLean. This is her first general fiction novel, like contemporary fiction. She is known for writing historical romances, which I've read and I've enjoyed. But this book, while it does have a romantic subplot, is not specifically a romance, and it's contemporary. And it is so good. It's the perfect beach read. It's about messy rich people who you also come to care about and find compelling. I feel like her character work in this is really good, but what really draws you in is the juiciness of this super wealthy family. The patriarch has died, and they're all coming together to sort of fight for their inheritances. He's set this game for them to complete. And the main character who we're following, who also ends up in a romance, she's been estranged from the family for several years. She doesn't really want to be there, but if they don't all do their tasks, they all lose out on the inheritance, and hers is just to stay for a whole week. And that's hard for her, and we get into why. So there's a lot of family secrets, a lot of messiness, but also I think really well-drawn characters that, as much as, you know, none of these people are perfect, some of them have done some pretty terrible things, you come to really understand them and care about them, because I think the character work in this is so good, and it's great. It's so satisfying. One of my best reading experiences with a book I've had this year. Definitely would recommend if you haven't picked it up. I loved it. So there you go. Those are the books that I read in the month of November. Overall, I would say it was a really strong reading month for me. I read a lot of books. I enjoyed most of what I read. I guess it's worth saying that because I'm working adjacent to publishing, there are some books I'll read that just don't make it into these wrap-ups. So, you know, if you're curious to see the full breadth of the things that I'm reading, I would recommend following me on Goodreads, which is linked down below, where you can see kind of like all of the different things that I'm reading. If you made it to this point in the video, leave me like an ocean water related emoji for these summer storms in the comments down below. Or for your question of the day, let me know, what was your favorite book that you read in the month of November? What was the best thing that you read? Why did you love it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.